Using graphs is one way to represent information. When you read this paragraph, it gave you the changes in length of a largemouth bass compared to the age. And so the chart is one way to look at it, or you could plot those points on a graph and see that there's a definite change in size as the fish gets older. What you'll notice though is there's a sharp change and then it gradually steadies off, which would make sense as the fish is not going to continue to grow. It's going to get to its largest size and stay there. And so graphing very often helps us understand the comparison between two sets of information. In this next example, you can see that they gave us the year versus the cost of a postage stamp. And you can see that if we were to plot those on a graph, that postage went down at first. It stayed the same for many, many years with very little change. And then it started going up in price. And so from this graph, you can see what happened with the information. Let's look at example 2 here. What's important about graphs is that you pay attention to the title of the graph and then what the lines represent. So we can see that this X line here represents time, the Y represents distance. But since we're talking about a skydiver, we need to know what type of distance. Are we talking about how far he is from the ground, how far he has fallen? Those are going to look different. And so in this case, we're talking about the distance he's fallen, not how far he is from the ground. Normally you're thinking of a skydiver starting at the top and going down. That would be distance from the ground. But in this case, they want to know how far he has fallen. When he first starts, obviously before he jumps out the plane, he hasn't fallen at all. He falls very, very sharply. And then what do you think happens here? Here, he probably pulled his parachute because you can see his very sharp falling very, very quickly as he has now fallen 3,000 feet in just a matter of 20 seconds. But now he slows down. If he pulls that parachute, how far he falls over time is going to slow down. So then they've asked us a question, how far has he fallen after 10 seconds? Well, we're going to go to 10 seconds. We're going to go up, and we're going to see he's about 1,300. He's fallen about 1,300 feet. The next question, how long does it take for him to fall 2,000? Well, we're going to go to 2,000, and we're going to see how long it took him. Well, it took him about 13 or 14 seconds to fall. Describe the fall after the first 5, 15, and final 10. First 5, you can see that he jumps, he falls pretty quickly in the first 5 seconds, and then he steadily falls until at about 20 seconds, as you can see, that parachute was pulled. Let's look at one more example. The Wadsworth are spending the day hiking in the mountains. Miss Wadsworth's GPS-enabled sports watch records her heart rate and position, including the altitude. Analyze the following graphs produced. Well, the first one is comparing time to her heart rate. You can see that her heart rate is at a specific time, beats per minute. It goes up pretty quickly as she starts to walk. It steadies off. It cools down a little bit, goes down. Steadies off, goes back up, steady, goes back up, steady, down, and then plateaus back off. This is what her heart rate is doing. Well, if you look at what the altitude is doing, you can see they're climbing up. They have a flat area. They go down, then back up, a flat area, and then they go back down. Her altitude changes. And you can see a little bit of that as she starts to climb. Her heart rate changed. It steadied off. As she got to the straight part of the mountain hike, her heart rate settled down. When they started descending, she probably was walking a little bit faster. Her heart rate came back up but steadied, but then she started climbing again. You can see her heart rate climbed. It steadied back off as she was walking in a steady pace. As she went back down, it picked up a little. She was probably going a little bit faster, and it steadied off again. So graphs are a great way to compare two things. Typically, we're looking at time compared to something. Over time, how did her altitude change? Over time, how did her heart rate change?